Pixel Realms is now live. This is episode 34, Saturday morning cartoons. Remember getting up in the early hours of Saturday morning and tuning into your favorite cartoons? We don't either. Trust us. So let's dive into our past. As always, please don't forget to like and subscribe for more content. And Joe, let's start off with some quick news because this was a very, very light week.
Yeah, so I think we talked about it last episode of the one before that with Mind's Eye, which was supposed to be like the next GTA type of game. And well, clearly if anyone's watched any videos, it's a total disaster.
CD Project Red.
No, this wasn't them.
Oh, I know. It just
Oh,
gave
this is
me.
worse
It
than
gave me.
that. Worse than that.
Well, it still gave me CD Project Red Cyberpunk vibes
This was more of
when it
like
comes to the failure.
Andromedon, like Mass Effect kind of.
No, see, I didn't think the Andromeda. Okay, yeah, I'll agree to disagree just because I don't remember the launch being that bad, but I remember Cyberpunk being bad.
It was bad on console.
Oh yeah, definitely. On
Mind's Eye is bad on everything.
console.
Yeah, on console, like Red Dead, not Red Dead, Cyberpunk was total disaster. On PC, like where I played it, other than some optimization issues, it was fine. And
Yeah,
I was running on
fair
a
enough.
lower end card at the time. But anyways, so Mind's Eye, disastrous launch. They had enormous amount of refunds, very similar to a title that launched last year with a lot of conversational pieces about it being the biggest, best open world survivor type game that eventually collapsed and had one of the highest ever, I think the highest ever, maybe now number 2 on the list of refunds on Steam. What was that called? Like behind or I don't know, whatever, something. You know what I'm talking about, probably.
Probably. I think I know which one you're talking about, but now it's talked about as like a meme or a joke. But
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, so Mind's Eye is gone. It's sad,
so build a
obviously.
Rocket Boy, more like build a failure game
Yeah,
boy.
it's sad when like developers go under like this. Like I don't want any developer to go under, but when
No,
you
absolutely
produce a
not.
product that clearly should have been pushed back or maybe just canceled altogether, or overhyped. That's a problem. I
Were they
think they
backed by
overhyped it.
somebody? Were they backed by somebody, or were they completely independent?
I don't know enough about them. I don't
Because
know.
that's what I'm more wondering about. Because if they were completely independent, then there was no excuse. There was no excuse. There should have been delays, even if it would have cost them money. They were already going to cost them money by releasing a bad game.
Yeah.
It was going to cost them even more. It was going to be catastrophic, and this is what ended up happening. But if they were like backed by someone big and kind of forced to push it out the door, then it's a little bit more understandable because
Doesn't look like they
can't stop
were.
that.
They were. It looks like for the most part, the game started development on Amazon Lumberyard with a team of 3 ex Rockstar North employees. So it doesn't
Wait,
look like they were.
Is it Amazon or no?
No, it's not. It's not Amazon. It was
Okay.
on Amazon's development platform kind of thing, the free engine, and then they converted
That
over
was
to
their
Unreal.
first problem. That was their first fucking problem there.
Yeah.
But that's unfortunate then because there's no excuse. Like if you don't have some big company pushing you to make you put out the game, then there's really no excuse. I mean, you're gonna take a hit even worse if you let the game be refunded to the point that it was. So you're better off taking the hit and being like, look, game's not ready. We would rather you all get a good game, a good product, than us push the game out just to meet a deadline. And if anything, that would have maybe given them more respect, being like, look, this company wants the player base to have a good game, you know. So maybe we'll check it out. That maybe we weren't going to, but maybe now we check it out because they were like, hey, this game's not ready, and we're not going to give it to you until it's ready. And then and they push it back. It might have actually had a better showing, as people would have been like, that's big props for recognizing a problem and fixing it.
Now, the game we were talking about before was called The Day Before. And this is an
Oh,
interesting
that's
list.
not even the game I was thinking of.
This is the list. This is from Watch Mojo, which I don't know
Oh
how
God,
accurate this number is, but
it's pretty bad.
it sounds correct. These are the top 10 refunded games on Steam ever. Number 1 was Day Before. Number 2, No Man's Sky. Number 3,
Mm-hmm.
Cyberpunk 2077.
Mm-hmm.
Mortal Kombat 1, the Switch version. That's weird. The Switch port. Why is this on? Oh, this isn't Steam. This is just refunded games altogether. Starfield, which dropping over 200,000 refunds in the first 24 hours. Jeez. Assassin's Creed Unity, Dying Light 2, Fallout 76, No Man's Sky again, and Grand Theft Auto, the trilogy, the Definition Edition, which makes sense. So all of those make perfect sense of the list of refunded games overall. Really interesting.
Okay.
Again, I don't know how accurate the numbers are, and I don't know if the numbers like
I
one,
don't.
two, three are correct. But
I
yeah,
don't trust.
we
I
know
don't trust Mojo for anything.
we know that Days Before was the highest refunded game period. Steam themselves said it, or Valve, I should say. No Man's Sky was definitely on the list as well. Cyberpunk for sure. Even CD Projekt Red confirmed that one. I didn't know about Mortal Kombat, but that's a Switch version. We know Starfield had a huge amount of refunds. And
I
Dying
was
Light
thinking
2, I didn't know
about
about that.
Concord. I thought you were talking about Concord because
Oh, that
that
was
was
in,
the one that's like memed. That was
yeah,
last
that
year.
was
Where
EA's. That was EA's thing, wasn't it? Concord.
yeah, uh, the game was apparently 8 years in development or some shit like that. I don't know, but it was a massive failure and a flop, and it's like memed on now, pretty hard. Being
Speak,
like, oh man, I can't wait for Concord. Where's Concord?
speaking
Right up
of,
there with Anthem.
I like Anthem. Speaking of massive failures,
Of
the
course you do.
Microsoft Store has always been a massive failure, but the Xbox app
Yeah.
for PC is the only way to actually get on Xbox Live's Game Pass thing, and it works. It's fine, but they recently will in the Insiders program for the Xbox app, but they are turning the Xbox app on PC into Universal Launcher, which integrates your Steam library into it, which is kind of cool. So they're trying to get people to wean off of Steam's program on over to their Xbox app. Obviously, the ultimate goal here is to convert you over from Steam users to Xbox users, and that's not going to
Mm.
happen.
No, I mean, I'm pretty integrated in my ways. I don't see like if anything, I'm so tired of having 75 launchers. Like another launcher, although it does integrate Steam, isn't a terrible idea. But I don't know. I've got so many launchers as it is, where it's like just the thought of downloading another launcher. It's just like whatever.
Yeah, and I primarily use Steam, right? But then
Hmm.
obviously I have the Ubi Play one, I have the EA one, I have the Blizzard one, and then Epic. That's all the only launchers I have on my system, personally. But I know like Bethesda had their launcher, but that's gone now. They finally jump in, and Ubi and EA have been both getting their games into Steam, but you still need to have their launcher to launch the game, which is crazy to think about it on its own.
Yeah, I don't have any of those installed, but I have except for Blizzard. I've been playing XCOM again, and XCOM apparently has a launcher. Um,
XCOM has a launcher?
yeah, because it'll have you choose between like XCOM 1, XCOM 2, or Chimera Squad.
Oh, okay, okay, okay.
I know the Civ because I think they're the Civ devs, or
Yeah,
something like
yep,
that.
they
But
are.
I know because Civ's on there as well. So that's all like they have a launcher. Yeah, I'm just I'm so over launchers.
So today's episode is all about Saturday morning cartoons, and I don't even know if that's a thing anymore in today's world.
I think it is. I just don't know. Like I'm so out of touch with it, and because and I think the biggest thing is that cable's not really big anymore. That I feel like um it probably isn't viewed like it used to be. But I'm fairly sure it still exists. but
Looks
I
like
could be wrong. Let me see.
mid 2010s is kind of when it started to fade out based on my quick decline recently, such as Nintendo, Cartoon Network, and Disney Channel. Yeah, so it looks like a lot of it's
Oh yeah,
actually
you're right.
gone
No
away.
traditional Saturday morning cartoon blocks as existed in the past no longer exist on major networks.
But I think
The
you're
last
right.
major network to air a Saturday morning cartoon lineup is the CW's Vortex, edited to run in 2014.
Wow, almost
What
over 10
the
years ago.
fuck?
Yeah.
Yeah,
But you're
but
right.
I guess it
It's the
makes
streaming.
sense.
Yeah. It's
Yeah.
people like these companies will put out new
Mm.
episodes and you just pop on Netflix or Hulu, whatever the hell it is, and watch it
I
through there.
Yeah, my I can tell you right now that both of my sons, even well, they're both basically grown-ups now, but even when they were a kid, like we didn't keep cable very often for financial reasons. And even then they never really like once they got around 10 years old, I would say by the time they were 10 years old, they were already kind of diving into being on the PC more than anything. So like they watched the really young cartoons for a while. They were into like the Blues Clues and the and some of the Nickelodeon block, and then some of the Disney you know kids shows, like early morning kids shows like Mickey Mouse Clubhouse and whatnot. But by the time they
Yeah.
got but I guess by the time they got to like preteen and whatnot, it was very much like computer, computer, computer. So they didn't watch a lot of TV. They were either playing video games or watching YouTube. That by definitely by 2015, my kids were all YouTube, all the time. And I think that's what it is. Is I think YouTube became Saturday morning cartoons for people.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's sad. It is kind of sad as someone who grew up with it, but it's understandable that the times have changed drastically,
What do you
and you can
think
find all
is
these shows.
Oh yeah. What do you think is the biggest positive note when it came to we haven't mentioned any titles yet, but the big positive note of having the Saturday night or Saturday morning cartoons?
Um, I think it was well, for one, it taught children to be able to get up at a certain time. When I was younger, I would even have like a little. I had like digital alarm clock that I set for a certain time to make sure that I was up by, I want to say, up by like 7 or 7:30 to give me an hour to fully wake up, because I believe the cartoon block started at 8.
Mm-hmm.
And there would be times where I woke up at like 5:36 and way before the cartoon block began, and you would catch like the very tail end of like something like, for example, Nickelodeon. They had Nick at Night, and
Yeah.
you had the old Andy Dick show, and some of those shows like Green Acres, a lot of the old live action, yeah, sitcom shows, and you would catch those, and then they would merge into, like, I guess the really early morning cartoon block. That's where I would watch stuff like David the Gnome and the Smurfs and whatnot. And then by the time 8 o'clock came, you would either watch Nickelodeon or Fox had a morning show, Disney had morning shows, or like there was several channels that, and uh, I remember closer to teenage years, kind of picking and choosing, where it'd be like, okay, 8 o'clock is this show, not 8:30 is this show. I don't like this show, so let me change the channel and I'll find 8:30 out. So I was flipping the channels and was kind of like structured.
Oh yeah,
Be like,
yeah.
okay, 8 o'clock was this, 8:30 was this on this channel, 9 o'clock was this, and then it ran for, most of the cartoons ran for about 2 hours. Sometimes you'd get a couple. You'd have like one channel that would run until noon. It would be like the 8 to noon block, or 8 to 11 block. So you had a couple channels that had different things, but that 2 hour block from like 8 to 10 was like the big block.
What's rather interesting is there's a few TV shows,
Hmm.
sitcoms that I would stumble upon when I was a kid. You know, flipping through the TV looking for a cartoon, and they became shows that I eventually started to watch as an adult. King of
Mm-hmm.
Queens, Everyone Loves Raymond, Seinfeld. These are all shows that like I was like, oh, stupid, adult stuff. I don't want to watch this crap. And then a few years later, as you get older, you're like, oh crap, this stuff is amazing. And so I don't know, it's hilarious because like Frasier would be one of those things. Frasier, I used to watch. There used to be a Penn and Teller magic show or something way back in the late '90s, and after, or sorry, it was, I think it was after that show, Frasier, a rerun of Frasier would come on, and I'm like, ah, this stupid crap again. And years later, I was like, oh, this Frasier show is pretty damn good.
I so I wish I could say the same. I never got into um. I guess you could say I've been a collective kid at heart for my entire life because the only really live action shows that I used to watch was the TGI Friday night block
Okay.
on I believe it was ABC or one of those channels where you had Family Matters
Yeah.
with Steve Urkel.
Yep.
You had Step by Step. You had
Step by step. Do, do,
oh
do.
man, I can't remember all of them. I think Boy Meets World might have been on there too. But they were all like they were the live action kind of like teenage drama comedy shows that kind of gave you real life situations. Those shows are. I'll tell you what. As much as I love cartoons, that those shows also, along with the cartoons, are sadly missed to this day
Yeah.
because you don't get those shows anymore that really teach the moral lessons. Like I still remember certain episodes, like of, for example, Family Matters, where one of the girls gets beat up for her like shoes or whatever, and then it gets as far as that she buys a gun from like somebody to defend herself, and uh, because her other friend who got robbed and beat up bought a gun, and she ended up getting shot, and there was that whole lesson about guns and that kind of stuff, and it translated very well. There was a mental health episode of, I think it was Step by Step, where one of the boys was having trouble learning in school, and everyone was like, oh, he's just dumb, he's a dumb kid, blah 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 blah, and it turned out that he had an actual mental health deficiency, some kind of like thing. I don't know if it was autism or just something, but and those shows are sadly missed, and
Yeah.
Saturday morning cartoons too. I mean, Gargoyles to this day still has some of my favorite like deep episodes that like really taught you something that you don't get anymore. That later on in the later 90s and even into the 2000s, those episodes were cut because they were too disturbing for children, even
Yeah.
though it taught a real lesson.
Think
I
about.
remember you remember the episode I'm talking about? It was
Yeah.
the one where one of the gargoyles gets a hold of the police girl's gun,
Mm-hmm.
fires it, it shoots her, and she almost dies.
Mm-hmm.
And because he's afraid to tell the truth, he says, "Oh, this bad guy did it." And so Goliath, the main good guy, goes rampaging and attacking and then it's like, no, I did it. And it was like the teaching. It taught gun safety. It taught honesty, and that was considered too disturbing for our children of today. Are you fucking serious? This is what kids need to learn.
Yeah. I think there were a lot of positives with a lot of these cartoons. We call them cartoons, but they were very deep cartoons.
Some of them were. I mean, some of them were, kind of mindless because
Oh yeah.
and there was nothing wrong with that. But yeah, like, as silly as Doug was a show
Yeah.
was about an awkward teenager growing up
Mm-hmm.
and through his kind of weird awkwardness, learning how to talk to girls, learning how to stand up to
Patty
bullies.
Mayonnaise.
Huh?
Getting to talk to Patty Mayonnaise.
Yeah, Patty Mayonnaise. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Yeah.
So I
So
mean, I grew up with a lot of these shows, and I wish that my kids had stuff like this. Granted, they probably wouldn't watch them because of the computer, but
when so Animaniacs came out
Mhm.
in, well, it was part of Tiny Toons, and then eventually
Hmm.
branched out into its own thing. And they brought it back for a couple years in 2000. I think it was 2020. It was on Hulu. And one thing that stood out when I was watching the new episodes was how deep the show was. They would talk about things that were very political. They would talk about
Hmm.
things that were about the environment. And if you go back and watch the OG stuff, it was the same thing back then.
Yep.
And it's really cool because it was a show that was teaching you about what was right and wrong. And as a kid, you're just
While
seeing
still
the
having their zany
yeah.
antics.
And the same
Yep.
thing, you can even say this about Ren and Stimpy because as aggressive as a show of that can be at times, I felt like
All
it
right,
did
Joe.
teach you.
All right, Joe. I'm gonna give this to you, but I'm kind of grasping at straws there.
Well, I'm just saying there were
Don't
definitely
whiz on
episodes.
the electric fence. I
They were think about
mean,
the episodes where Stimpy being fat, right, and making fun of Stimpy, or
yeah.
Ren being just a psycho, and the episode goes really deep in talking about it's very similar to the mental health stuff. It's being made fun of and stuff like that, right? It,
Yeah.
it goes into that aspiration. Now,
Some of the cartoons, some of the cartoons, they would dive into a subject matter and teach you something while being completely masked by the show's
yeah,
format, the zaniness. You know,
yeah,
there was a lot of that, and you didn't get enough of that, I don't think. And I kind of understand why, because at the end of the day, a lot of these cartoons in the morning were to sell toys, were to shut kids up, so parents had a few mornings to a few hours to themselves,
holy
while
cow!
not
There's a reboot
while
of Ren and
people.
Stimpy. That's crazy.
There is.
Yeah, apparently it's coming out or just came out.
Oh
2020. It
no,
came out last year, I guess. Haven't touched it.
I don't.
Probably won't,
It
but
must not. It
but
must not be doing well because I haven't heard anything about it.
it has the two
I
original
did
voice
hear about.
actors, which is kind of cool.
I did hear about Animaniacs, and I never got a chance to get to it, which is a shame
It
because
wasn't
I
bad.
loved Animaniacs.
It was pretty good.
Yeah, Robert Paulson is still one of my favorite voice
Yeah.
actors of all time.
Uh
He's
huh.
way back from the Ninja Turtle days all the
Didn't.
way into now.
Yeah. Okay, so going down the list here, we have Ninja Turtles came out in '87,
Yep, I
and
watched a decent amount of that.
so Mark and I were talking prior to the podcast, and so '87. So it was 2 years after I was born. So I was 2 years old when the show came out. So I definitely didn't watch it at '87. I definitely watched it in the early '90s, though. A lot of these shows on this list I watched reruns of. There were a
Every
couple.
show on this list I watched in the 90s. I probably watched them shortly after they came out as well. But but a lot of times you don't remember those things. Like
Yeah.
I vaguely remember some. That's the reason why Transformers has stuck with me my entire life, because I do vaguely remember watching some of those episodes. Like I said, I was one of those 86 kids that saw Transformers the movie in the movie theater, but I was no more than 3, maybe 4 years old, so I don't remember it. I just remember getting upset
Yeah.
because of Optimus Prime, and later in life watching the VHS tapes or of the movie again. Still could never. I always had to fast forward to that scene.
Hmm.
It wasn't until like the 2000s that I finally was able to like sit down and watch the scene, and I could now watch the whole movie without fast forwarding through Optimus's death, because like it hit me so hard every single time. And it's like, oh, he's a robot that turns into a truck.
Yeah.
And that's stuff that we've gotten into in the past about, when characters transcend their original purpose, whether it be to be just a character that sells toys, just a character to be a character. And it's like these characters meant something to us. And Ninja Turtles was one of those shows where you got attached to the different turtles. You had your favorite turtle, but you also always loved them as a team. Like I can't remember a single time where I thought, man, I wish away. Like, no,
Yeah.
my favorite turtle was Michelangelo, but I never wanted to see Raphael or Leonardo, go away. Because they were a dynamic team,
Hmm.
you know. Um, I didn't watch a lot of He-Man. I watched more of the newer rebooted show in the, I want to say, the late 2000s or mid to late
Yeah,
2000s. Um, I watched more of it then. I watched a
83,
lot of
83
yeah,
for He-Man.
yep.
Crazy.
Literally the year I was born. Um, X-Men, the animated series. I watched a lot of the animated series, the 97 or not the 97 series, but the original series, plus the X-Men Evolution
Yep.
was which was on the CW, which was a whole different take.
Mm-hmm.
And I watched both of those. Spider-Man was on, I think, either before. I think it was on before the X-Men because they
Yeah, I
even
think so.
there was even a two-parter where you watched the Spider-Man episode and it ended with him like I think going to Xavier's mansion, and then the next episode was the episode of the X-Men, and it picked up at the end of Spider-Man. It was like a
That
really cool segue into each other. It
was
was
in 94.
yep, yep.
Now
You
this
know, I
one,
watched
the next one is a one I watched the hell out of, and actually I rewatched the entire series not too long ago.
I
Uh,
didn't watch it as a Saturday morning cartoon though. I think this was more of an action block
yeah,
on a channel for me.
I
But
watched it
Batman the
after
animated
school.
series,
Yes, Batman the
yeah,
Animated Series,
because
and what's
yes,
cool
that
about
was after school.
yeah, Batman the Animated Series had a reboot not too long ago as well, and it wasn't too bad. I watched it. It was definitely deeper, and it was I think some of the writers came back as well. The art style was
Hmm.
the same. Here's how much Batman the Animated Series had an effect on me is, and I don't remember which one of the Arkham games, but someone they end up putting the animated series suit into the game, and that's what I rocked the entire game.
Yeah, uh, I can see that.
And of course, Mark talked about big Transformers '84.
Yeah, Transformers is. I mean, I'm a 42-year-old man, and I'm started collecting them again. I've been collecting them for like 2 years. I think it's going on 2 years now. And I started collecting them again, and I'm not trying to go too crazy with it, but like I definitely have like a goal set in mind with like completing the entire G1 cast, which is already a decently sizable cast, but not I'm not even gonna go into all the different shows that come after. Like I'm not gonna try and collect all of that, but at least the original G1 cartoon characters. He-Man or GI Joe. GI Joe and Transformers kind of went hand in hand, even though they weren't related in any kind of stories. There were a lot of voice actors traded time. I know Cobra Commander's voice actor was also Starscream, who was a major character. There, Frank Welker was all over the scene, all over the place as Megatron, and there's if any that he played in GI Joe, but he probably was in it. Same thing with Peter Cullen. Like all of those people, they kind of just a lot of them traded voices and shows throughout the entirety of a lot of those runs.
Yeah, I didn't really watch a lot of GI Joe. That's my brother who watched
Same.
that one, but like
I watched
I
GI
watched.
Joe because it was there before Transformers.
Yeah. Now this one, the next one, Captain Planet and the Planeteers. I
I
watched the
hated
hell
that
out of
show.
that. I loved it. You hated it?
I hated that
Oh
show
my
so
boy,
much.
why'd you hate it? It was
I
great.
just didn't. I didn't like the characters,
Good old
man.
PBS. That was fantastic.
Like the corny like summoning of Captain Planet because it was like Earth, Fire, Wind, Water, and then Heart. Huh?
You gotta have heart. But it was great
Yeah,
because
sure.
if people would have actually watched it, paid attention, and used that in today's world, we might not have as bad of a planet. They were talking
That's
about
true.
recycling. They were talking about toxic waste and oil spills and how we should take care of our planet and plant stuff. And it was a great concept and it was a brilliant idea. It just, and it made it actiony and fun so our kids were
Yeah,
engaged with it and you were learning at the same time. But you know around it it came out right in the same time that any other big aggressive show, Ren and Stimpy example, where you were teaching the good stuff but then all of a sudden you're teaching the not so good stuff with like Ren and Stimpy. So kids are of course going to take what they want to take out of that. But Beavis and Butthead around the same time was out as well.
Yeah, but it definitely belonged in the Saturday morning block. I remember
Hmm.
watching on Saturday mornings, and even if you didn't like the show, you still watched it because you were like, well, it's in the block. You know, it's
Yeah.
just like, if anything, like, even if you didn't watch the show, you still had it on. You still kind of watched it. If anything, you used it as your like, not bathroom break, but like that was the show that you would make sure you had your bowl of cereal and you were eating your cereal and kind of getting ready for the show that you wanted to watch, but you still watched it.
Yeah. Garfield and Friends. I
I
love this
watched a
show.
lot of
Yeah.
I watched a lot of Garfield. It got moved
Garfield and
to the
Friends.
early it got moved to the early morning block towards the 90s. So like you would watch Garfield and Friends and a couple shows before the main block started.
Hmm. And that was 88. Captain Planet was
Yep.
90. We talked about Animaniacs. That was
And
93.
then the spin-off show Pinky and the Brain.
Oh
Pinky
man,
and
I
the
love
Brain
some
exists
Pinky and the
because of
Brain.
anime.
Oh, it's a
Yep.
good time.
Uh,
Fantastic.
I
95.
didn't watch. I didn't watch any of Recess.
That was an
I
ABC show. I
vaguely.
watched some of that. It was a good time. It was,
Yeah.
it's obviously the title. It's during recess, but they were talking about bullying and stuff like that in it as well.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the next one is obviously a big one for the both of us. It wasn't a Saturday morning show. It was I think an after school kind of thing, but they did replay it on Saturday, and that was
They
Mighty
also did
Morphin
an.
Power Rangers.
They also did an early morning block. On the weekdays because I
Oh
remember
yeah,
trying to
yeah.
catch. They did
Summertime,
like
I
a
think, for school. During the school
some of it.
break.
Well, some of it was during school because I remember trying to get ready for school slowly so that I could watch as much of it as I could because they had that one and a couple others like Super Sentai style shows because there was Big Bad Beetleborgs,
Mm.
VR Troopers, and Power Rangers, and they played all of those shows together in that early morning block as you're getting ready for school and then leaving. But yeah, definitely the after school Power Rangers, and then they would replay it on the weekends. Usually in the later morning block, like say like 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, right before the block is done for the day. They would show the one of the episodes from the week. Usually the Friday episode got replayed on Saturday.
Oh, okay.
Mm-hmm. And then
Uh,
Doug, of course, we mentioned.
Doug. Doug was. I watched a lot of Doug, and didn't Doug get
Mm-hmm.
rebooted not too long ago?
It got rebooted at least once, but I think it's fairly old too. The reboot of Doug,
Yeah,
like
it
I
might
want to say
be.
it's early 2000s.
Now Heathcliff, I did not know it was in 80. It was made
I
in
didn't
the
either.
in 80. That is wild.
I watched a decent amount of Heathcliff because it was on before Garfield.
Yeah, and Heathcliff was more of like the city style of
Mm-hmm.
Garfield. Not as lazy and
Heathcliff,
stuff like
Heathcliff,
that.
no one should.
Yeah,
It had like that was the tune.
yeah,
They had a really catchy opening. That's what a lot of these shows. They had really really catchy openings. I remember a lot of the Disney. When we get down to them, the Disney DuckTales, Darkwing Duck,
yeah. Yep.
a lot of them had that really catchy hook that was like even if you didn't show, you stuck around for the opening.
Now, the guy that voiced Heathcliff, he worked for Hanna-Barbera, so he did a lot of voices for them, including like Speedy
Oh yeah,
Gonzales and Daffy Duck, etc. So,
probably
very,
Scooby
very
Doo.
famous. Yeah, probably.
Which I noticed,
Uh,
I don't know how we missed it, but we forgot to put Scooby Doo on the list.
yeah, I didn't watch a lot of Scooby-Doo. That wasn't like, I
I
don't know
watched a
why.
lot of Scooby Doo,
There's never.
but oddly enough, that was another one where it was. Um, I wish I could remember the exact early morning block, but like
Yeah.
I remember watching like this is talking somewhere anywhere between 5 a.m. and 8 a.m. So there was like a 2 to 3 hour block before the Saturday morning block, and I would watch stuff like David the Gnome,
Yeah.
Scooby Doo, Heathcliff, Garfield. Uh, um, oh no, the show is drawing a blank now. Tom and Jerry,
Mm-hmm.
all of those shows I watched a ton of because as a young hyperactive kid, sometimes you wouldn't get up at 8 o'clock. You 6 o'clock or
Yeah.
7 o'clock, and your parents would be like, go the fuck to sleep, you little shit. Or get me
Inspector
another beer.
Gadget.
No, I'm kidding.
Inspector Gadget in
Inspector Gadget.
'83. Uh,
Yep.
watched
I
a
didn't know it was
ton
that
of
old either.
that. Yeah, yeah, that surprised me. I think I
Watched a lot.
watched.
Yep.
I don't remember what channel I even watched that on, but I watched a lot of
Nickelodeon.
Inspect. Was it? Yeah, 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 Nickelodeon, right?
Mm-hmm.
The
Yep,
Real
it was a Nickelodeon show.
Ghostbusters was '86, and
I didn't watch. This one was one I didn't watch a lot of, or if I did, I don't remember it. But I know you are a big Ghostbuster
yeah,
fan.
huge Ghostbuster fan. I watched the hell out of this show a lot. It wasn't until probably the '90s when I started watching it, but it was. I had the Ecto Pack on my back, and
Mm-hmm.
the trap and the toys. This is one of the few
I
actual
do.
real toys I had growing
I
up was
do remember the
Ghostbusters.
toys. I actually did have several of the toys. I remember the Ecto Pack. I
It
remember
was
I
cool
had the
because like
car.
the Ecto Pack, the one I had a foam. It was like those pool noodles kind of things, right?
Yeah.
And like you would turn it and it would shoot out, so it was like the stream coming out. Oh, so cool.
Yeah. And then this next block, a lot of this is mine. I watched a lot of all of these shows. Pokemon,
Was
uh,
97 really?
97. Yes,
Wow.
the original run was 97 to
Gosh,
99.
been going strong for almost 30 years.
Yeah, it
It's not
took
slowing
30
down
years
either.
for it's took 30 years for Ash Ketchum to finally win a chance. He's still 10 years old, by the way.
Yeah,
Um,
Simpsons
but
guys are still like really young.
here's the funny thing. Pokemon and also on the list Digimon from 1999. This was towards the end where I'm a preteen going into teenage, going into I'll put it like this. I got married in 2002. Digimon was 99. So this was high school. This was very much like I would still wake up early on Saturday mornings because I had a Saturday around that time. I had a lot of friends in the neighborhood, and by right around 10 to 11, right when the Saturday morning was off, a lot of us would go outside and be outside all day, hanging out and playing.
Hmm.
So I would wake up early. I would catch the Saturday morning block, and then I would go outside. Was and Digimon and Pokemon. It's funny. I didn't even know they were anime. Like I legit didn't have any idea until I got into anime
Yeah,
in
especially back then.
late 99, early 2000.
Hmm.
No idea it was anime, and then later found out, oh, Pokemon and Digimon are anime. But they had very catchy songs. They had
Gotta catch
Pokemon
'em all.
Pokemon, while also teaching about enslaving animals and battle each other. Also had more would teach their stuff. Digimon at times still told a coherent story, and every now and then would segue and give you like a life lesson in there. And then there's the Disney block that I mentioned earlier, which I didn't realize that 87 was when DuckTales originally started, but you
Woohoo!
had 87 DuckTales,
Wow.
1991
Gizmo Duck and
Darkwing Duck.
DuckTales. Oh
Yep,
man, I
yep.
love myself some Gizmo
Blathering
Duck.
Blatherskott,
Yeah.
and then they would turn into
And the
the
reboot
into
wasn't bad at all.
no, it was
The
not.
David Tennant
I
was Scrooge McDuck, and I was like game on
Mhm.
for him because I love David Tennant.
Yeah, and then 1994's Gargoyles, which we mentioned
Gargoyles.
as well, and all of those, especially Ducktales. Ducktales would hook you with the dun 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 dun
Yeah.
dun dun dun, and you were in. It was, and there was four shows. I didn't mention it, but there were four shows. It was Ducktales, Duck Tailspin,
Oh
which
yeah,
was
Tailspin. Yeah, but
yep,
Blue. Yeah.
yep,
Oh yeah,
and
Tailspin.
Gargoyles, and those four shows were
Tailspin.
the Saturday was the original like
And the
big
guy Duck
Disney Saturday morning block.
Launchpad was in like
Launchpad
all
the
three of
Quack.
them.
Yep. Yes, he
DuckTales,
was.
Tailspin, and Darkwing Duck.
Yep. Darkwing Duck,
And he
Tailspin.
couldn't
Yep.
he couldn't freaking fly in any one of them.
No, yeah, but
I
it
should
was
say
funny
he
that
couldn't
they kept.
land. He
It
could
was
fly.
funny that they kept a coherent. They kept the character, and the core of the character stayed the same. Even though I think Ducktales and Darkwing might have had some kind of relationship, with each other.
Yeah, I
Not
think
like the.
I think
I know the
McDuck
reboot
was in there
heavily
once.
implied.
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
But
I think the
but
Beagles were in Darkwing Duck, the Beagle Boys.
yeah, I think they might have been. But I don't think there was a lot of tie-ins. I think they all kind of thing. It wasn't
Hmm.
until the new DuckTales that they really implied
Yeah.
the cohesiveness, because there was or is a reboot coming. I don't know if
Wouldn't it
it's
be
still happening.
wouldn't it be crazy if Huey and Louie, if when they grew up, one of them end up becoming Darkwing, and
I you
Darkwing's
know
taking place like years later? Wouldn't that be something?
I thought about that. I thought about if they really wanted to tell, like, if they wanted to tell like a really really gripping story. If they wanted, depends on how deep they wanted to go. Imagine if they did something like this, where one of them becomes Darkwing Duck, and then one of them becomes like evil. What if like Huey, Dewey, or
Oh,
Louie? One of them becomes evil, and then you've got the two brothers that are maybe working together, and then they find out that their third brother is evil, and then and the show revolves around them trying to save
yeah.
or redeem their brother.
What I
Um,
what I really
I
liked
feel like that
about
might be too deep
yeah, yeah,
for this day and age, but that would be such a cool storyline.
yeah. What I really liked about Darkwing Duck is that it was, it's a superhero duck. It's your Batman,
But he had no
wannabe,
powers.
but he had no powers, and he's also not great.
Yeah,
He's
he
trying
was
to climb up
incompetent
things and
Batman.
fall down. Yeah, and so it was pretty cool. And then he had his family, to help him
Hmm.
complete the mission. So
The
he's a guy that wanted to be a superhero and was a superhero, but wasn't a great superhero. He just happened
Yeah,
to accidentally
and
win.
I liked the whole storyline where his daughter is adopted,
Hmm.
Goslin,
Yeah, Gosling.
and there was that whole storyline about like she was kind of a little troublemaker kid,
Hmm.
and he saw it in his heart to be like, no, she needs a family, and that's what she really needs. That's
Yeah.
why she's such a troublemaker, because she kept bouncing around the orphanage,
Yep.
and then so she needed that stability, and I really liked that. Like I said, these Saturday morning cartoons, they were all fun and games, and they all were silly and whatever, but a lot of them would snake in some moral compasses and some life lessons that a lot of kids these days are now missing, because they don't have like some of this stuff. And yes, it's up to the parents to teach them, but you know I'm not trying to make excuses for parents. I know I'm not the greatest parent in the world either. But we're all we are people, and we are capable of making mistakes. And so when the a lot of these shows, kind of what they did is they helped parents in a way. It was like they, through their messages, would help teach kids, so that way the parents still had to do their job and still
Yeah.
be parents, but they at least helped instill some basic morals that would help the parents build off of as well, and maybe teach them, like, go further and teach more about like the family morals and this and that. Like, I don't know. I feel like YouTube, being the thing that it is now, is both a blessing and a curse, because now kids can watch whatever they want,
Hmm.
and it's a little bit harder. Like, even if you put a filter on, like, I I'm not smart enough to figure it out, but when the kids started using YouTube a lot, I did what I could to like put like a filter on really extreme, stuff, and even then they still found ways to watch things that they shouldn't.
Yeah.
And it was a lot harder to monitor than simply having a kid in front of the TV Saturday morning, and if they flipped the channel to something that they shouldn't, you took the remote and you changed it back and you held onto the remote.
Hmm.
And now kids can do all kinds of weaving and bobbing on the internet.
To mention just a few real quickly here that we skimmed over: Care Bears, the Smurfs,
Yep.
Tom and Jerry,
Yep.
Alvin and Chipmunks, Flintstones,
Oh yeah.
Jetsons, Fat Albert, Bobby's World. I don't remember if you watched that one, but Bobby's
I
World.
did not.
We had The Adventures of Rocky and Bullwinkle.
Oh yeah. I
Yeah.
watched a lot of that in the mornings,
So
early mornings, like 5, 6 o'clock in the morning.
those are just a few just to add into the mix of shows. That there were so many amazing shows between, let's say, primarily for at least us, between the 80s, somewhere in the 80s and 90s that were released. that are iconic to our eyes and to many, many others. And then there are the big,
Late '80s into the late '90s, where it
y-
was the big
yeah.
boom.
And then, of course, for people older than us, the Scooby Doo times, the Bugs Bunny, the Looney Tunes, stuff like that. There were those iconic
Mm-hmm.
times. So, like, the cartoon era started really in the '60s.
69,
Yeah,
1969 was Scooby Doo, and
yeah,
it's
and
a
it
fun fact. Frank Welker, who plays Freddy, Fred Jones, is still playing Fred Jones
no
to this
way.
day. Is and he's been playing Freddy since 1969, and he's also been playing Scooby Doo for at least the last 20 years.
That's crazy.
Yeah, that's
So
something to think about.
I do think we have to honor a bit to Hanna Barbera, for bringing
Mm-hmm.
the Saturday morning cartoons. Really, I don't know if it's considered Saturday, but the cartoons at least to the screen for us all to enjoy. Obviously,
Hanna Barbera was a big reason why these shows existed.
yeah, and of course Warner Brother Animation bringing Bugs Bunny,
Mm-hmm.
and then we got the Looney Tunes and all that jazz eventually as well. But Hanna Barbera and Warner Brothers overall just really brought in the era of cartoons, at least in
Yeah.
our generation. And obviously, it's still a big part of entertainment in general. It may not be the Saturday morning anymore, but still, these kind of animated cartoon things are still a very big deal.
It
Mark,
shows you. It shows you when you go to a toy store,
yeah,
or a retail store like Walmart or Target, and you go down the toy aisle, and you can still find Ninja Turtles. You can still
yeah,
find
that's how iconic.
Transformers. That shows you that these Saturday morning cartoons have a lasting power.
Yeah, for sure. They're going to be around forever.
Yeah.
I can't see a reason why they would ever disappear.
As long as the toys sell, as long as people remember them, they will be around forever, and that's it's kind of a good thing because I'll give you a real quick example before we end. Here. My oldest boy, he's 20, or he's turning 20. He didn't grow up with Transformers. He wasn't a big Transformers fan. We saw Transformers 1 in theaters. He went with me to, because it looked silly enough that he was like, all right, I'll check it out. From there, we've been slowly watching through all of Transformers. We started back all the way with the G1 show, and we watched all of G1. We've watched all of Beast Wars. We've watched all of Beast Machines. We're on the mid to late 2000s shows now. We're about to finish Transformers Cybertron before we go into the movie era, where we had 2007's Transformers animated, and that's the same year that the live action films came out. So like from there on, we're about to go into like the more modern Transformers stuff, and we've been slowly watching that stuff, and that's from something that was created and existed when I was a child, and a child, my child, who is like I said, yes, he's an adult now, but that shows you a longevity, right? Like it
Yeah,
shows you
absolutely.
that this stuff is timeless. When someone that's now in his 20s in this timeline is kind of going back and watching some of this older stuff, and it still holds up.
Yeah, it's really cool. Really cool.
Mm-hmm.
Don't forget, Mark does stream on the Twitch,
Yep,
twitch.tv/Hisoka RPG.
Hisoka. Yep, Hisoka RPG. I stream. Usually it's Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. I've been kind of a little bit more lax with my schedule the last week because I've had a lot of other appointments, but I try to at least stay somewhat consistent. I should be going live here today at some point. I was
XCOM?
gonna actually, I think I'm gonna dive back into Hitman. I finally passed a level that I was struggling, so I'm like, okay, I beat that level, so now I can either replay it stream, so that I have it on stream, or I'll just skip right to the next level.
Cool. Well, as always, thanks everyone for watching and listening, and we'll see you for the next live episode.